In the 21st century, disappearing is not an option. Your phone knows which street you're walking on. It knows your pulse. It knows how many hours you slept last night. Satellites in orbit can read a license plate from space. We have mapped the ocean floor with more precision than the surface of the moon. This is the story we are sold. You are safe because you are watched. But on the night of March 8th, 2014, that technological fortress collapsed. 239 people, a wingspan of 64 meters, 250 tons of state-of-the-art machinery. The Boeing 777, the safest aircraft in modern aviation. It didn't crash. It didn't explode. It didn't call for help. It simply erased itself from reality. This is not a story about an aviation accident, and it's not a story about a system error. The story of MH370 is the greatest vanishing act in modern history. And by the end of this video, you'll realize that the terrifying part isn't that we lost an airplane. It's the reason why we still can't find it. Welcome to the file. Every catastrophe begins with a boring routine. For Flight 370 from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, the conditions were perfect. Clear skies, perfect visibility. In the cockpit sat Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, one of Malaysia Airlines' most senior pilots. A man so obsessed with his job that he built a flight simulator in his own basement. Beside him was Farik Abdul Hamid, a young first officer nearing the end of his training. The plane took off at 12:41 a.m. For the first 40 minutes, everything was textbook. The aircraft climbed to 35,000 feet. At 1:19 a.m., the plane was about to leave Malaysian airspace and enter Vietnam. Air traffic control requested a standard frequency change. From the cockpit came that final, chillingly calm voice. "Good night, Malaysian 370. It wasn't a goodbye, it was a protocol. But it was also the last time the world would ever hear from that plane. Exactly 90 seconds after those words, something happened that cannot be called an accident. Inside a Boeing 777, there is a device called a transponder. It tells the world who you are, how fast you are going, and where you are. To turn this device off, you have to reach up to the center console, turn a dial, and flip a switch. It cannot be a short circuit. It cannot be a mistake. It is a deliberate act. At 1:21 a.m., MH370 vanished from civilian radar screens. Vietnamese controllers were staring at a blank void. Malaysia thought the plane had been handed over. And right there, in that blind spot, on the razor's edge between two nations, MH370 went dark. If the plane had crashed there, we would have found the wreckage in the Gulf of Thailand the next morning. But the plane wasn't falling. The plane was running. Civilian radars were blind, but military eyes were still watching. Records from the Royal Malaysian Air Force, revealed days later, showed the horror of the situation. Immediately after silencing its identity, the plane executed a sharp, computer-controlled turn to the left. It was supposed to go north, to Beijing. Instead, it turned back west, over Malaysia. And this is where the pilot's genius, or his madness, reveals itself. The aircraft flew by hugging the airspace border between Thailand and Malaysia. Why? Because when military radar operators see an unidentified blip on a border, they assume it belongs to the other guy. Thailand thought it was Malaysian. Malaysia thought it was Thai. MH370 used this diplomatic blind spot to slip past the world unnoticed. It flew over Penang Island, Captain Zaharie's hometown. Some theories say he banked the plane, just to take one last look. But the only thing we know for sure is that once the plane reached the Andaman Sea, it turned one last time. Not north, not east, but south, toward the most desolate, dark, and unforgiving place on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean. When the plane left radar, the world assumed it had crashed. But 35,000 feet above the ocean, a metal ghost was still gliding. Communication systems were dead. The passengers were likely already unconscious. But the engines were still talking. The Rolls-Royce engines were sending an automatic ping to a satellite named Inmarsat every hour. It wasn't GPS data, it was just a handshake, a digital heartbeat. Tick, tock, for 6 straight hours. While breaking news channels screamed, "Where is the plane?" that machine was still in the air, in the dark, in silence, flying south until the very last drop of fuel ran dry. Engineers in the UK analyzed the microscopic delays in these signals, the Doppler effect, to solve the hardest math problem in history. The data confirmed the impossible. The plane had flown into a void where there are no islands, no shipping lanes, and no hope. This is what we call a zombie flight. If the cabin is depressurized, oxygen masks drop, but they only last 15 minutes. Passengers and crew would succumb to hypoxia and freeze to death in their sleep. But in the cockpit, the pilot has a separate oxygen supply that lasts for hours, which means the final 6 hours of Flight 370 were likely flown by 238 corpses and 1 living man. But why? Why would a pilot with a 30-year career destroy 239 lives? The FBI confirmed that weeks before the flight, a route was plotted on Zaharie's home simulator, a route that went straight into the southern Indian Ocean and ended with fuel exhaustion. It is the strongest evidence for the pilot suicide theory. But, in every great mystery, the truth is often hidden in the ledger. To solve this, you don't just look at the map, you follow the money, and you follow the cargo. The manifesto of MH370 was just as strange as its flight path. The plane was carrying 4.5 tons of fresh mangosteens, out of season. And hidden beneath that fruit was a 200-kilogram shipment of lithium-ion batteries. Even more suspicious, another 2,000 kilograms of cargo was simply listed as radio accessories, a generic term that was never fully explained. Was there a fire? Did the batteries ignite, filling the cockpit with toxic smoke, forcing the pilots to turn back before they passed out? This is the hero pilot theory. But it doesn't explain why the transponder was manually turned off. It doesn't explain the complex border evasion. When you have a fire, you land at the nearest airport. You don't fly for 6 hours into the abyss. Or is there a darker scenario? Diego Garcia, a massive American military base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. At one point, the plane's heading seemed to align with it. Was the plane hijacked? Was it shot down because it was approaching a restricted zone? Former French intelligence officers have hinted that the plane was carrying sensitive material and had to be stopped. Is there proof? No. But suspicion thrives in the vacuum of truth. July 2015, 16 months after the disappearance. A beach cleaner on Réunion Island off the coast of Africa finds a piece of metal covered in barnacles. A flaperon from a Boeing 777. The serial numbers matched. It was MH370. This piece of debris told us 2 things. 1, the plane definitely crashed into the ocean. It was not stolen. It is not in a hangar in Kazakhstan. 2, the damage on the wing suggested the plane didn't nosedive. It glided. It entered the water carefully. But the main fuselage, the black boxes, the people, still missing. Ocean currents scattered the debris. Billion-dollar search missions scanned the seafloor, but found only 19th century shipwrecks. The plane lies somewhere along the 7th arc, a mathematical line in the deep ocean, 4,000 meters down. MH370 might be found tomorrow, or it might be found in 100 years. But the legacy of this event isn't the wreckage. It is the slap in the face to modern human hubris. We think we control everything. We think our GPS, our radar, and our data have conquered nature. But MH370 reminded us of a terrifying truth. The world is still too big. The ocean is still too deep. And the human mind is still the darkest black box of all. That plane is down there right now, in absolute silence, crushed by the pressure of the deep, a metal tomb holding 239 stories, forever. The next time you board a flight, and you look at that little airplane icon on the screen in front of you, remember this. That icon is just data. And if someone pulls the plug, all that remains is faith. And sometimes, faith isn't enough. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments, was it the pilot or was it something else? History has the answers. You just have to know where to look.